In 2010, a Greek politician stood before Parliament and said something remarkable. We should learn from China's economic miracle. Greece was collapsing. China was building entire cities in the time it took Athens to pave a road. It sounded logical. It was also impossible. For the last 40 years, economists have watched China pull off something unprecedented. 800 million people lifted out of poverty, an economy that grows faster than any large country in history, infrastructure that makes America look like it's falling apart. Which raises an obvious question. Why don't other countries just copy what China did? Not poor countries. They've tried and failed. I'm talking about rich countries, advanced economies with money, engineers, and desperate voters who want growth back. The answer isn't about politics. It's about math that doesn't transfer. Here's how China's model actually worked. In the 1980s and 90s, China had something most countries will never have again. Hundreds of millions of rural workers earning almost nothing. Factories could pay them $2 a day, and it was still better than farming. That's not exploitation in this context. That's the gap that makes hypergrowth possible. When wages are that low, you can underprice everyone. Foreign companies moved production to China not because they wanted to, but because staying competitive required it. The cost advantage was insurmountable. China took that foreign investment and did something clever. It didn't just build factories, it forced technology transfer, then used the profits to build ports, trains, power grids. All those projects employed more low-wage workers, which created more growth, which attracted more investment, a compounding loop. But here's the part people miss. The loop only works when you start with wages near zero and a massive population ready to move from farms. Now try to run that playbook in Germany or Canada or the United States. You can't cut wages to $2 a day. Your workers already earn 50 times that. You can't suddenly have 100 million people willing to leave farms to factory dorms. Your population is aging and already urbanized. You can't force foreign companies to hand over technology because they'll just leave. You don't have the leverage of being the only place cheap enough to manufacture at scale. Even if a government tried to replicate China's infrastructure spending, it hits a wall. Building a bridge in Ohio costs 15 times what it costs in Hunan, not because of corruption, but because labor isn't cheap and regulations exist. The foundation of the model doesn't exist. This is why watching countries try to learn from China is darkly funny. In 2016, Britain announced an infrastructure program inspired by Chinese investment. It built one railway and ran out of political will. India has tried for decades to copy the factory model. It can't get wages low enough or regulations loose enough to compete with where China was in 1995. Even China can't copy China anymore. Wages in Shenzhen are now 12 times what they were in 2000. The factories are moving to Vietnam. What China did wasn't a policy you can Xerox. It was a one-time event in a specific place under specific conditions. The disturbing part, that window is closed globally. There's no country left with 1 billion underemployed people and low enough wages to restart that cycle. Automation is getting cheaper than even the poorest workers, and the environmental cost of another China-scale industrialization might be something the planet can't survive. So when people ask why rich countries don't just grow like China, the real answer is simpler than they think. China's miracle wasn't a blueprint. It was a one-time event in a specific place under specific conditions. Which leaves the rest of the world with a harder question. If you can't copy the last growth model, what's the next one? No one's found it yet.